Hi friends, today I just prepared some of the interview question and answers with the tech stack of Java, Spring Boot and microservices, which I have personally experienced all of these questions. So I just wanted some like who are really preparing for switching or to get into IT with this tech stack. It might get useful to have a glance. So let's get started. And the first question here is related to the Spring Boot. So the major difference between at the rate component and at the rate service annotation. So if we see the diagram, the hierarchy, we can say. So we have the at the rate component annotation. From that we have at the rate controller, at the rate service, and at the rate repository. So whenever which we are using the like important annotations, so we have to know in detail about those annotations in Spring Boot. So at the rate component is a generic stereotype for any Spring managed component or bean. So it is a class level annotation, we can say, and we have the repository. Mainly, we can say it is for the persistence layer used to indicate the class provides the mechanism for storage, retrieval, update, delete, and search operation on object. So simply we can say whenever we are dealing with any DB and we want to declare, so we can go with this at the rate repository annotation. And when we are coming to the service annotation, so basically when we use the service classes, it is meant mainly for the business functionalities dealing with the business logic or requirements. So here also the same, it is a stereotype for the service layer, and this annotation is used with classes that provide some of the business functionalities. And one more, we have the at the rate controller annotation, mainly for the presentation layer, MBC, which is model view controller. And it indicates whenever we annotate controller annotation, it actually indicates that a particular class serves the role of the controller. Mainly we deal with the web request handler. So whenever these are the mostly used and most important annotations in Spring Boot. So the interviewer may ask any of the questions related to these annotations. So we should be prepared for these annotations. And the next question related to Java. So the basic collection questions, the mostly like asked questions by the interviewers: when to use HashMap, LinkedHashMap, TreeMap, and HashTable in Java. So if we see, when we actually use HashMap, when we do not want to maintain any order of the elements, means when there is no need to maintain any order of the elements, and we are working only on the single threaded environment, not any other environment, and we don't bother about any order to maintain of the elements. So in this case we usually go to use for the hash map in Java. And the linked hash map, when we actually maintain some of the insertion order of the elements, and also we are working on the single threaded environment, then we go for the linked hash map. So the major difference, so both we will use in the single threaded environment, but whenever we want exactly to maintain the insertion order of the elements, then we go for the linked hash map. If we are not bothering about the order of the elements, then we are going to hash map. And if we come to tree map, so when there is actual need to maintain the ascending order, this is the insertion order, and TreeMap is like ascending order. So when we want to maintain the ascending order of the elements, and we are working on the single threaded environment again, then in this case we'll actually go for the TreeMap. And the hash table, which is a synchronized one in Java. So when there is no need to maintain any order of the elements and we are working on the multi-threaded environment, so we need to focus, understand single threaded environment, these all three single threaded environment. But the simple difference is like to maintain order or to does not maintain any order, and maintaining insertion order, maintaining ascending order, and which environment we are going to use. So based on the requirement, so we'll use this in Java. And hope this clears. So we'll go to next one. And one more favorite question of the interviewers is like, what is at the rate post mapping and at the rate put mapping are the major difference also we can say. So the we have mostly like we'll use get and post mappings and also put mapping. So here the question is post mapping and put mapping annotations, what it actually does and the difference. So the post HTTP method is used to create a resource. So whenever we want to create a resource, we'll use this post mapping. And how we will use that? With the at the rate annotation, post mapping annotation for mapping this HTTP post request onto specific handler methods. And how we'll declare this? So this is the shortcut at the rate request mapping of method equal to request method dot post. So for whatever HTTP methods we are using, so we actually are declaring the same, but here in the request method dot, here it will get changed whether it is a post, put, get, delete, like that. So for example, for the post mapping, so we'll annotate this with the post mapping and your endpoint. So we'll have the corresponding method. And if we go for the put mapping, so the put HTTP method is used to update the resource. So the post mapping or post HTTP method actually used to create the resource, means we are creating the new resource. And put mapping is actually to update whatever resource already created, already there. So we are just going to update the resource. And here with the annotation of put mapping, we'll use this. And the shortcut is, as I said, here after dot, the method will get changed. So here at the rate put mapping example, so here employees slash id, so we are finding the employee by um, his or her id. And if it is not present, so we are just throwing the exception. So for example, we are already setting the id with the email id. So if you want to update the same id with the other information like last name or any missing information of the same id employee, so we'll update using this put mapping. And after this, we are saving and getting it okay. So the next question, so related to Java, what is nested try catch block and which will catch or throw the exception? So this question, what it means is like nested try catch block we already know. So if a try catch block is present in another try block, then it is called the nested try catch block. So here the interviewer keenly wanted to know which will catch or throw the exception first. So we will be having multiple try blocks, right? Try catch block means in the nested try catch blocks. So he is trying to ask, so which will catch or throw the exception and which will got the exception in the nested try catch block, like hierarchy wise. So the main try block is like this: try with some statements, and try catch block with in the another try block, then try catch block within nested try block. So again we are having like this. After this three try blocks, we are having the exceptions. So we are catching the exception, then the exception message exception E1 and exception E3. So these are the exception measures, and last the which we are catching it is the parent or the main outer try block catch. So each time a try block does not have a catch handler for a particular exception. So it is not like mandatory to catch like to have a catch handler for a particular exception. Then the catch blocks of the parent try block are inspected for that exception. If match is found, that catch block executes. So what it is saying, so for every try block we like cannot have it is not mandatory to have the catch handler for that particular exception. Then the catch block like of the parent means we are having the outer one, right, the parent one. So that try block will get executed for that exception. If that actual match is found, then that catch block will get executed. If neither of the catch block nor the parent catch block, like whichever we are declaring, right, the catch block, so whichever it is not matching, and the parent catch block also it is not matching, then it will handles the exception. like then the system generated message would be shown for the exception, like what we see when we don't handle exception. So what it is meaning, so like it is not matching and it is not handled by any of the catch block which we declare by the try block. So the system generated like normal message, like it will throw exception, like how it is like when we are not declaring any try catch block, the normal exception it will throw, right? So this is failed like this. So such kind of exception uh, it will throw for us. So going for the next question. And generally, like for this question, when can we send response codes 200 or 201? Generally, we know that 200 category comes like for the success scenarios. So we might not ever like 200, 201, and one more we have mainly seen 204 status scores. So what actually it represents? So 200 status okay, as we know already. 201 created, 204 no content. So what are the, sometimes like interviewers ask what is 200, what is the message it will give. So like this question also he might ask. And sometimes like 200 when we will get, and what is its message. So if we see a 200 level response indicates that everything functioning properly. So if we are getting in the category of 200 means the functionality which we are doing is actually working properly. Then a 200 response always has a payload. Though an original server may generate a payload body of zero length or an empty payload. So whichever a payload we have, whether it is a zero length or whether it is empty also, whatever original server it is generating, it will display to us. So it will always has a payload with the 200 response. And the 201 HTTP status code indicates that a new resource was created after the server fulfilled the browser's request. So when we get the 201, so whenever a resource was actually created successfully, when like after the server fulfilled the browser's request, then we'll get the 201 um, HTTP status code. And here what is the difference? There is only one HTTP method used with the 201 HTTP status code, which is a post method. So this is one more tricky question. So whenever we are using the post method, in that method only we'll get the 201. So in the previous question once I said the post method means to create a resource. So here the 201 HTTP stored status code indicating that it is creating the new resource, means we actually using the post method. So 200 mainly we'll use for the get, and 201 only uh, there is only one HTTP method used with the 201 HTTP status code, which is the post method. If server does not want to send any payload in response, then it should send HTTP status as to not for no content. So the it is functioning properly. The request has been made successfully, but the server does not have actual payload to send in response. So in this scenario, it will send as a to not for no content. So this is also one of the important and slightly a tricky question. So let's move to the next. So this question again related to Java. Can we give HashMap key as object? So we know that HashMap is a key value pair, right? So the interviewer is asking, can we give key as object? So we will be have key value pair, right? So in that key, whether we can give as a custom object which we are declaring. So the answer is yes. We can have the HashMap key as object. So, but we need to follow some of the rules for that. The objects of custom classes can be used as a key in a hash map, but to retrieve the value object back from the map without failure, there are certain guidelines that need to be followed. So, whichever custom classes we are declaring, right? So we can have the that custom key in the hash map, but when we want to retrieve the value of that particular key, we need to follow certain guidelines. So the custom class should follow the contract between hash code and equals methods. So again, here this is also one of the favorite question by the interviewers. What is the contract between hash code and equal? So I think to make a different question for this. So for now, just remember that we have to the custom class which we are declaring. It should follow the contract between hash code method and equals method. So the one thing we have to note here is, if two objects are equal, then they must have the same hash code. So any two of the objects we are comparing, so we are saying those are equal means they must and should have the same hash code. And if two objects have the same hash code, they may or may not be equal. So it is a vice versa. So if the objects are same equal means, we are saying they must have the same hash code. But if it is the two objects having the same hash code, then they might or might not be equal. So that does not guarantee. So this is one more tricky question in the Java collections. So going to the next question, by exceptions means why we are using exceptions. Uses of having the exceptions in Java. So Java provides a sophisticated exception handling mechanism that enables you to detect exceptional conditions in your programs and fix the exceptions as and when they occur. So using exception handling features offer several advantages. So we are having a try catch block, and we can declare the custom exceptions, and we can catch the multiple exceptions using the pipe operators. So these and all are providing by Java, the exception handling mechanisms. But when the interviewer asks, we have to answer like major advantages of why actually we are using and we are having the exceptions. So the first point, to continue program execution after an exception is caught and handled, means we should not stop the application running if anything is failing in the middle or at the end. So we have to continue the program execution till the end. So the execution of the Java program does not terminate when an exception occurs. Once the exception is resolved, program execution continues till completion. So this is a one point. And the next, easy identification of program code and error handling code. So as I said, the use of try-catch block segregates error handling code and program code, making it easier to identify the logical flow of the program. And the logic in the program code does not include details of the actions to be performed when an exception occurs. Such details are present in the catch blocks. So what it actually do, whether it is we have to print the message, exception message, or we want to do something else, we will declare all those things in the catch block. Now, so wherever like exception handling means this block is getting failed, this is getting um, error means that time we have to log the meaningful exception message so that we can understand on which logic it is failing, on which um, code actually it is failing. So like we can say, for the easy identification of the program code and error handling code. Then meaningful error reporting. The exceptions thrown in a Java program are objects of a class. Since the throwable class overrides the toString method, you can obtain a description of an exception in the form of a string and display the description using a println statement. So we are having the toString methods, and if you are using the log4j, we will be having logger statements in that we can warn, or we can, if it is a severity is high, then accordingly we can maintain the logging levels. But the meaningful error we should get such that we can identify easily, and we can fix that easily. Identifying error types. Java provides several superclasses and subclasses that group exceptions based on type. For example, what it is meaning. So we are having like many types of exceptions, right? So exception, null pointer exception, and when we are dealing with the any APIs, REST APIs, so we will get a client exception or server exception. So Java actually providing several super and subclasses such that we can identify the what is the error type actually. So IO exception based on this. So the main these things we have to remember for like why actually we are using exceptions and why it is necessary. So moving to the next question, it is a basic Java and OOPS concept, I can say. What is association, aggregation, and composition? So we are if we see this diagram, so what is the hierarchy we can observe here. So what is association? It is a relation between two separate classes. This association is actually a relation between two separate classes which establishes through their objects. So using their objects, it will form its relationship between any two separate classes. So mainly association, it is meant for the relationship. Then composition and aggregation are actually two forms of association. So in the association, we are having the aggregation and the composition. So it is a relationship, it defines a relationship or represents a relationship between the two separate classes through their objects, and these are the two forms of the association. So composition in OOPS is a fundamental concept and describes a class that refers to one or more objects of the other class instance variables. So whichever we are having, right, the other classes instance variables, that it's this composition, this concept actually describes any of that particular class that is referring to the other class instance variables, the objects of the other class instance variables, and it is only a part of relation. So it is referring to one or more, whether it can be referring to only one or two or any more of the other class instance variable. So it is just a part of relation. Composition is a part of relation, and where aggregation represents has a relationship, means it will have a relationship anyhow. Aggregation, so it is actually a unidirectional association which is only one way relationship, we can say. So mainly, like, we need to remember, this association concept is mainly about the relationship between objects and classes. So again, in that we are having the aggregation and composition, the two forms of the association. So moving to the next question, and again, the OOPS concept. What is abstraction and encapsulation in the OOPS concept? So abstraction, as I said, it is a feature of OOPS, and it is actually used to hide the unnecessary information or data from the user, but shows the essential data that is useful for the user. So, for example, the bank example I am taking as a bank. So whenever any normal man goes to the bank, so a bank people will bother only about his Aadhaar ID, address, name, these things, but not about his hobbies, etc., etc. So like that way, we can understand. So it is actually hide the unnecessary information that which we don't want. It shows only the essential data that is useful for the user, and it can be achieved by using the interface and abstract class, because in the interfaces we only declare the methods. So only the in interfaces only the methods are exposed to the end user, and the implementation classes it will be different. So interfaces will have only the methods which are exposed to the end user. So in this way, by using the interface and abstract class, we can achieve the abstraction in Java. So the encapsulation, it is also feature of OOPS, and it is important feature of OOPS. It is used to bind up the data into a single unit class called class. So here it is providing the mechanism which is known as the data hiding. Means it prevents to access data members from outside of the class. So outside of the class, it is not permissible to do any operation. Whatever we are having related to the data members of that particular class, we will be having access to that only particular class, and it actually prevents to access the data members from the outside of the class, and it is also necessary from the security point of view. It is mainly encapsulation, means we are altogether binding the data into a single unit, means in a class itself, which is known as data hiding. And the next question, what are stereotype annotations and which annotations comes under stereotype annotations? This is related to Spring Boot, as we discussed earlier, some of the stereotype annotations. So what actually it means? Stereotype annotations are markers for any class that fulfills a role within an application. Means we will say this, some of the annotations comes under stereotype, and some of are not. So what actually means, it just like marker for that particular class which is fulfilling or representing the particular role within that application. So such type of annotations are called as the stereotype annotations. Means this helps remove or at least greatly reduce the Spring XML configuration required for these components. Means we need not to maintain all the configuration and declare all the XML configuration whenever we annotate these annotations, right? So it itself uh, um, do all the configuration, and it actually reduces our code. So these annotations are used to stereotype classes with regard to the application tier that they belong to. So such type of annotations or stereotype annotations, and These are the four annotations comes under the stereotypes. So at the rate controller, at the rate service, at the rate component, at the rate repository. So earlier I have explained what these annotations is for. So moving to the next question. So from given list of numbers, the numbers whether it can be a random or sequence or ascending or descending, find the second largest number using streams in Java 8. So Java 8, we are having streams API, which we can do all our aggregate operations. So in that, using that streams API in Java 8, we have to find the second largest number, and the list of numbers, it can be anything. The input can be anything. So how can we approach to this question? So first we are going to sort order, and by taking the first two numbers by comparing each and everything, and by using the skip method. For example, if the numbers are this, the input is this, so it is not ascending, it is not descending also. Now it is some random numbers I have taken as example. So we are finding out the second largest number. So as it is a array, I'm streaming it. So whenever we are using the stream, so we have to declare the stream. I'm streaming off the numbers is nothing but the input. I'm boxing it and sorting to the in the sorted method we have comparator dot reverse order. So means it will reverse all the order of the input. So boxing, boxed and sorted, all these methods what actually does, we have you have to actually refer, and skip. Along with the skip method we are having the limit method also, but don't confuse the difference between skip and also the limit. So after skipping the first element, whichever the number is mentioning, right, so that is skipping the first, and in that we are finding the first element and getting that. So all of these methods what it actually are doing, you can have a look. So at last we are getting the second largest number and printing it. So on the concept of streams, there are many questions. So we need to be hands-on on the Streams API in Java 8. The next question, how to communicate between microservices. So if you are using the microservices, the main question and the favorite question by any interviewer is how you communicate it. So we actually having two techniques to communicate between two microservices or any of the microservices. So those are synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous call as so the HTTP call if we take, so whichever response, like we are giving the response, we are hitting the request and waiting for the response. Until we receive a response, we do not move forward. We do not do any action. So we wait, we get the response, then move for the next step. So that is a synchronous method, that is the synchronous call. And asynchronous, an example of asynchronous communication protocol is message based communication. So whenever, like regardless of the response from the first request, we are moving to the next step. So in such case, we define it as a asynchronous. So the interaction is always asynchronous where a message broker is used. So whenever message broker, for example, Kafka, we have Apache Kafka. So it is like whenever we are using any message broker, that comes under the asynchronous technique. So we have to be cautious, like how we are communicating between two microservices. So there are two techniques, and the example for asynchronous is synchronous call like a REST APIs, which we use the main HTTP calls, and asynchronous, like simply we can say whenever any message broker is used, then we'll call it as a asynchronous call, any message based communication. And thank you so much. You are with me till the end of the video. And please let me know if you want any like more technical questions to be covered. Thank you. Bye.